Hi SHC, I'm Brooklyn Baird, a reporter for the Emerald, and today we'll be interviewing Mr. Curcio to give you insights on the AP Psychology course. Can you give a brief overview of what students can expect when taking AP Psychology?
So the briefest and probably most unhelpful overview is that psychology is the study of mental processes and human behavior. So it doesn't really tell us too much, right? So it's basically the equivalent of a college course in psychology, which is pretty standard across most universities. So it's basically a survey course that kind of touches upon the main topics in psychology: motivation, personality, emotion, and biology. I would say psychology is becoming more biologically based, so a lot on the brain and different brain structures. But there's also a social psychology aspect to like how we behave in groups. So I think there's kind of something for almost all students in terms of if you're more interested in science, if you're more interested in, say, sociology. So we touch upon a broad range of topics in psychology.
Interesting. Could you describe what a typical day for a student in your class looks like?
I can tell you what the ideal day is like, right? So some of the days don't always go as to planned. But for the most part, students will have an open note reading quiz on what they took the night before. And then after that, we usually have a mix of direct instruction and students working on actual questions, right? So a big part of how I teach is something called the testing effect, which is that we don't just learn by, say, reading, but we learn by doing. So trying to give the students as many opportunities to practice practice with the new information and the new skills they picked up. So we try to give them a lot of time to do that, both solo and in groups.
Are there any specific patterns to when tests occur in relation to discussions or lectures?
There's an average, but I wouldn't say necessarily always a pattern, because the pattern really depends upon how long the units are. So just the way, because we're teaching to kind of the College Board's, curriculum. So there are some units that are literally 12 pages long, and then there are some units that are 50 pages long. So you can see where it might take, it's hard. But I would say like on average, probably like every 2.5 to 3 weeks, there's probably an exam coming your way.
What does the workload look like in a week?
So that question is hard to answer just because there's two variables at play. There's the workload, which I would say is college level. So there's a lot of work in most AP classes. There's a lot of reading in this class in particular. But I say the second variable is the student and how they process information. So for instance, I'm a really slow processor, so it takes me longer, say, to read something. So you might have to add like a half an hour or 45 minutes when you're talking about someone who processes information like me versus some of my students who are much quicker than me in terms of their processing. But I would say if you're taking an AP class, you should expect probably per week, you're going to be doing 3 to 4 hours of work for most AP classes at our school.
Thank you for giving us some insight on AP Psychology.
Thank you, Brooklyn. It was a pleasure to see you again.
For the Emerald, I am Brooklyn.